How many pieces of art do you have in your house? Oh, it's a tough question. I know it is a tough question for me as well. I'm Angela Brown. I am here today with Mandy Theis, and she's an artist. And she's going to share with us how we can choose the right kind of art that will make our homes feel less cluttered. And then check this out, how we can feel more important because of the art we chose. Now, that is why I'm here today, because I want to learn how to choose the right kind of art that will make me feel like $1 million without paying $1 million, right? So please help me welcome Mandy Theis. Mandy, how are you today?
Hi, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a delight to be here.
So you have come at clutter from a completely different angle. And I know that your background is in trying to minimalize a little bit. Please
Mhm.
introduce yourself and tell our audience who you are and how you got to this space right now. And then I want to unpack all the stuff about the artwork.
Sure, absolutely. I'm Mandy Theis. I'm a licensed art teacher that pursued something called atelier training. And don't worry if you've never heard that word before, most people have not, but it's just a fancy word for saying drawing and painting realistically. So I pursued drawing and painting realistically. And of course, as I was creating artwork, I was noticing in the world that even though there were all these beautiful artworks available, from students at really affordable price points and things like that, that there was an intimidation from people acquiring real artwork, and also a trend of buying like 50 prints for your house and then like changing them out every season, right? And as I started my own minimalism journey, I found that maybe the part that I could contribute to this conversation and to, people who are trying to declutter their homes and things like that, because I was a total hoarder, like I had stuff everywhere, was that, hey, you don't need 50 prints that you rotate in your house. You can have a small number of really high-end artworks that will bring you true joy, that represent you as a person, that bring a more authentic experience into your home, that are one-of-a-kind works.
Well, I'm fascinated to learn more. And right as we were getting started, I was curious how, if you don't have a taste, like if you don't have a particular aesthetic or you don't have a particular style, like how do you know, like if what the stuff you have in your house is proper for you, or if it's making you feel anxious or overwhelmed, or maybe it's the wrong Zen
Oh,
vibe, if you will.
Oh, for sure. So there's so much I want to say in response to that. But one thing that I would like to say is I just finished reading a book called How to Arrange Yourself in the World. It's like cozy, how to arrange yourself in the world. And this author said something that really struck me, because I get this question a lot from my students, like, what should I paint? How should I paint? Because, I teach art online. And, this in this book, she was saying, hey, just make an opinion on everything you see and you'll start developing a taste for what you like or what you don't like. So, look at my headband. Do you like this color? Do you like that it's this wide? Should it be skinnier? Would you like it more if it was skinnier? Do you like how the curls are sticking out of the headband? Do you wish there were more curls? Do you wish there were less curls? Like, make an opinion on everything that you see, and you'll start developing your own unique sense, because it's like your handwriting. It's there. It just, most of us aren't exercising it and seeing it, right? So by forcing yourself to have an opinion on everything that you see, you're going to start streamlining your vision a little bit. And then also, I'd like to point out, as I've been going through my minimalism journey, my aesthetics have changed too, right? So we pick up all these aesthetics from the people around us. Like I had this idea that I inherited from my mother, who probably inherited it from her mother, that you can't have red and pink. And I was painting some flowers and I was taking out the pink ones because I can't have red next to pink. And my instructor was like, what are you doing, Mandy? So we inherit some ideas that we haven't tested, and we haven't asked ourselves, is it true for us? And so I think that's where we get this disconnect between, is it really us or it really isn't? Because when you find the right thing for you, it'll resonate with you, in a soulful way, right? And when it's
Mhm.
not, it's because you're thinking that you're supposed to do it one way, or you're supposed to, have this kind of artwork, or the Instagram influencer you follow says do it this way, but it's not right for you. And when you're honest with yourself and you give yourself the space to think about it visually, you're like, yeah, actually, I don't like that. So letting go, just like we inherit all this stuff that we feel guilty letting go of when we're decluttering our homes, like we've inherited visual clutter and visual ideas and visual aesthetics, and not all of those are ours. Some of those we inherited, and we need to weed out the ones that aren't for us.
Well, and that's an interesting point because a lot of us look around our homes and we have a collection of things that we've acquired over a number of years. And some of them are not what we would choose. Some of them
Yeah.
were left behind from children that have moved out of the
Hmm.
house, or they
Hmm.
were inherited us from parents that have moved on. And maybe they
Hmm.
were important or a certain aesthetic to a parent or a grandparent, but maybe not to
Yes.
us. And then we
Yes.
feel trapped in keeping it, and then as we look around the world that we've created for ourselves,
Mhm.
it isn't what we prefer. And
No,
so
no. In some ways, my grandfather was an orphan, and he had an insane design aesthetic. Like, he commissioned furniture in the 60s, and, but he didn't inherit anything. He didn't have any preconceived notions, right? And he created a home that was uniquely his and definitively his, and was always his. But then what do I have? I have some of those pieces in my house, and because they remind me of him, but I'm like, do I really? I hate this chair. It's so uncomfortable, right? Like, why do I have this chair other than
mhm.
I appreciate, it was from my grandfather. And just recently, I've let go of one of the things and kept another one of the things. And the thing that I did keep really does resonate with my aesthetic. It's like this light that has these big lanterns that like hang, and it's very, very aesthetic, very cool, quirky kind of thing. And that is my vibe, right? So, but it took me, 5 years of owning both before I could decipher which one resonated with me and which one was not, for
So
me.
let's go back to that for a second, because if you are making an opinion on everything and you
Mm-hmm.
have things that you're emotionally attached to, but you don't like them, how do
Uh-huh.
you say, I'm giving myself permission to let go of this, like you let go of the chair that was so uncomfortable after all the years of hanging on to it?
Yeah. Well, so for me, if I have a lot of emotions invested, I have to find a good home for it. And that doesn't mean foisting it back on family and putting them in the same situation. But in my
Mhm.
case, I'm a professor. Until recently, I was a professor at the Florence Academy of Art, and they do a lot of life drawing with nude figures. And it turns out that a really firm chair is ideal for models, right? And so I was able to find a place where the qualities of the chair were appreciated and loved and used, and I was able to let it go that way. So, um, you know,
Wow.
that's a lot more work, but it's better than keeping it in my house when, it was creating dissonance for me in my heart. Now it has a happy home where it's loved.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I know some of us are having a hard time getting rid of some things. And I know,
Yeah.
before we get into the art piece of
Mhm.
it, art is more than just painting. And I gave me a little statue or figurine of a frog,
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
I didn't like it particularly, and I didn't want it, and it was just a gift. So I was kind of like, huh, okay, so somebody gave this to me, and I feel obligated to display it when they come around. But
Right, right.
because I displayed it when they came around, they assumed that I really liked it.
Oh, did they give you another one?
They did, and then all of the family members jumped in and started buying me frogs until I had this whole
Right.
collection of frogs, and it was plates and calendars and little tchotchkes and knickknacks and all
Yes,
kinds
because
of
you're the
these
frog lady
statues,
now.
and I was like, what is with the frogs? Like, what is going on here?" And so, and some of them
Uh,
were original pieces of art,
sure,
but
sure.
I didn't want any of them. And
Yes,
it
yes.
wasn't until I actually walked through the logics of it in my mind,
Uh-huh.
and I said, if I were hit by a bus today and my family from 2,500 miles came across the country to claim my estate, they're going to
Mhm.
see all these frogs. And they're going to say, whoa, we didn't know that Angela loved frogs. And then they're going to try to split up all these frogs between all my
Uh-huh.
brothers and sisters so
Uh-huh.
that everyone can do right by me and like hang on to a little piece of me or whatever. But I never
Right?
liked the frogs in the first
Right, they
place.
weren't you.
No, they were gifts I didn't want. So how do you take a
Uh,
gift of an original piece of art that you don't want, and how do you let
um,
it go?
It's okay to not like all art. There's no obligation to love art, and it's okay to let it go. And there are people, at the secondhand stores that are going to love that art, and there are people in your life that may love that art, and especially frog art. I mean, come on, if you took it to your elementary, I work in, I'm a licensed K-12 art teacher, so I spend a lot of time in the public schools. Are you kidding? Like a frog collection, take it to the first grade teacher. It's the prize box for the students, right? And they're gonna like be amazed by getting real art as a reward for doing their homework or whatever. So there's places for things, and then there's also a place for you to say, this isn't for me, and I'm going to donate it and hope that it finds a home where it does belong. I do want to circle back to something you said about children's artwork, because this one's really hard for people, and as an art teacher I feel very passionately about this, and there's something that most people don't consider, and it constantly astonishes me, is what I do. I don't have any children of my own, but I have 6 nieces and nephews, and they love sending me art because they know that I love art and I love their art and I love it when they send me art. And I can't keep all the art, right? Like
Mm.
it's a lot of art. But what I do is I keep 4 or 5 pieces that I love the most, and then I actually frame them, like put them in a frame. Like even art that like you love because it came from a child, but you don't think is pretty. Put it in a nice quality frame, and all of a sudden, boom, it's amazing. It can, like, it's better than any printed work that you're going to buy at any of the mass produced places. And also I just keep all of the artwork there. Most of the artwork's done on 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, right? So I stack them 10 deep in the frame. That's where they store, and I rotate through them, whichever nephew or niece is coming to visit, right? And
Oh,
then
wow.
it's there. They feel loved. I love seeing it. I love having their artwork on the wall, but it's not consuming my life. It's not consuming my drawers. It's not consuming my guilt, right? And like, I am astonished at how few people actually frame children's artwork. Like, just if you're like, oh, I should care about this, or it doesn't really fit with my decor, like put it in a frame that goes with your decor, and you'll be amazed at how it can brighten a room and just feel so special.
That's a great idea.
Mhm.
All right, so now I have another question.
Mhm.
If we have a challenge with too much stuff in our lives, how do we find artwork that speaks to the person we're trying to become, not the person we're running from?
Ah, yes. I find, at least, through all, I've been selling my drawings and paintings for over a decade, probably longer than that. And I'm amazed at how many times it's an instant art heart moment with a particular piece, even with people that have never bought art before, but they're just like suddenly like, oh, that painting of pansies. My great grandmother used to garden pansies, and it just brings me so much joy to see them. It reminds me of sunny days and childhood. And I love this pansy painting that you just painted. I have to have it, right? So I find that the things that when we talked about developing our aesthetics, right? Like, I like this, I don't like this. When I started evaluating every single thought of my day and everything that I was seeing, I was like, oh, I really like dappled sunlight. That keeps, when I make my list at the end of the day of things that, I liked, dappled sunlight comes up almost every day, right? Any day there's sun, dappled sunlight is on my joy list of the day. And then I thought about the paintings that I own, and I'm like, yeah, dappley. They're very dappley, right? Like, I just acquired a new painting, of a forest with dappled sunlight. Um, so, when you have an opinion about things, then when you're being more deliberate and when you see artwork and you're trying to decide, then you have an idea of what actually brings you joy. If you write dappled sunlight on your list every day for a month, and then you find a painting with dappled sunlight, it's probably going to be the right aesthetic for you.
Mm. So do you just spend then, let's say that you're looking at art and maybe you're going to buy a piece of art. Do you
Mhm.
just spend a moment or two and just kind of absorb it and see, that question where you said, ask yourself, is this me? Do I like
Mhm.
this? Does this make me feel cozy? Is this make me feel anxious or angry
Right.
or
Right. One thing that I've really found helps people, especially if they're new to buying art, because it's scary to spend a lot of money on something that you haven't spent a lot of money on before, right? So it's
uh-huh,
different paying $500 for a small painting versus $10 for a print, right?
uh-huh.
So it can be a little intimidating, a little scary. So I feel like the first artwork, if you've never bought artwork before, if you find something that just like, wow, I like that, don't second guess yourself and just go for it. Like break that barrier, that mental barrier with yourself. And if there's something that you like and it just strikes you, go for it. Now, if you are into more collecting, you know, or you're ready to have a few pieces of authentic work, or you're trying to replace your entire print collection in your house, I find that one good way to really tell if a painting is for you or not is if you follow, there's so many wonderful artists on Instagram. If you like realism artwork in particular, if you search with the word atelier, Atelier, like atelier trained artist, atelier artist. So if you're looking for realistic portraiture or realistic flowers or realistic landscapes, that's the magic word there. But you know, most of the artists, including myself, my Instagram's Mandy Fine Artist, they show you progress pictures along the way. So, you know, that's a great way to tell, like, if you're interested enough to like follow along the progress and you can't wait until the next post to see the update, it might be the sign, you know, that that's a good painting for you, because you're able to see it and experience it over time as it's created, and you actually become part of that story. So you're more invested in the artwork as well. So I found that the paintings that sell the fastest are the ones that I've been putting the progress paintings, and also the people that are writing me 5 years later being like, I still love this painting, you know? So, you know, developing a relationship with the artist will make you love a painting, and also help you, you know, like the artist is making a series of paintings. Maybe you only like one of that artist's paintings, or maybe you like their whole aesthetic and you just entered, you know, through a single painting, and it happens both ways. Like, I have someone that bought a flower painting from me that hates flowers, but just really liked the softness of the edges on this one flower. They'll probably
How
never buy
can
a
someone
painting.
hate flowers? That's not nice.
Yeah, well, I think maybe it was, you know, this idea that, oh, I'm not a flower person, right? You know, we have all these preconceived ideas, but then lo and behold, there was a color scheme that really resonated with her, and like these edges that she really loved. And all of a sudden she did become a flower person, but she probably won't buy any of the flower paintings.
I did meet one woman who refused to have anyone give her flowers. And
Really?
when I asked her about it, I said, "Why are you so against flowers?" And she said, "Because every time I experience flowers, I'm at a funeral." And she said,
Mm,
"I associate
mm,
flowers with funeral." And I said, "Oh, that's so sad, because
mhm.
there's so much beauty and they're everywhere.
Right.
How do we change that?" So we worked on then her a little garden so she could grow some flowers
Oh,
that were alive and she
mm,
could watch the progress of them bloom rather
right. The
than
opposite of the
witnessing it
funerals.
that at the end of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then, and I just
Mhm.
said that, you know, who hates flowers, but I do remember I met one person who did. So
Yeah, it's you know, this is a totally off topic, but my favorite thing is to give flowers to men. Like, it's unusual, or like most of the times, you know, when I give them to men, like they've never been given flowers before, and it's such a
right.
joyful experience to do something unexpected and to show appreciation for a man in your life by giving them flowers. So, all the ladies out
Nice.
there listening, I strongly encourage giving flowers to men.
Give flowers to a man. Watch his
Yes.
reaction.
Yes.
So I have a question. You were talking about making a relationship with an artist, and
Mhm.
I think the experience of having
Excuse
a
me.
relationship with an artist is so important, because I
Absolutely.
remember one time I was in Paris, France, and I had stayed over an extra day
Mm.
because I was
Mhm.
trying to see a little bit more of the world, and
Mhm.
I was wandering up a hill, and on the side of this hill there was a building, and in the building there was a great big window,
Mhm.
and I got stuck looking inside this window. There was the most amazing painting that I'd ever seen, and it had light hitting it from a certain angle. But what
Mhm.
it was the great big head of a man, and his head was made out of books, and his
Oh,
hair was the paper of books, and his eyes was like a magnifying glass. And there it
very
was all
cool.
these different things that had to do with books, and like his
Mhm.
clothing was made of books, and his
Mhm.
arms, everything about him was made of books. And I just got stuck looking at this like,
I
whoa,
love
because I
that.
love books.
Well,
So
exactly.
it was a
Yeah.
moment that really caught me off guard. Well, then
Mhm.
this woman opens this door just a little bit and she said, "Do you want to come in?" And I said, "How much is this painting?" She
Uh-huh.
said, "That one's not for sale. It's going to
Oh,
an art show, but it's a
yeah.
$500,000." I was like,
Mhm.
"Whoa, I don't have a
Mhm.
$500,000 for this painting that I didn't need
Right.
5 minutes ago." But I said, "Thanks anyway, you know, I don't have a
Uh-huh.
$500,000. I'm just looking."
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then she waits for a minute. She says, do you want to meet the artist? And I said, what? I said, the artist is
Yes.
here. And she said,
Mhm.
yes, he's here today. And he's never here, but he's here today. And I
Mhm.
said, is it okay if we come in? And she said, yeah. So my husband and I went inside, and he didn't speak any English and we didn't
Mhm.
speak any French. So he shows us around his studio, and I was just mesmerized because there's more of where that came from. But
Yes.
you talk about buying something you can afford, and I didn't
Mhm.
have a $500,000, but he
Mhm.
had smaller versions. They were
Mhm.
probably 8 by 10
Mhm.
of very similar
Mhm.
similar paintings that he done
Mhm.
that were maybe not the grand finale, but he had
Right.
3 very distinct different pictures of these professor-looking old men that were all made of
Mhm.
books.
That's so
And I
cool.
sat there saying, "I just met the artist. I'm sure
Uh-huh.
this is, like, really valuable." And I I
Uh-huh.
I said to myself, like, how in the back of my head, I hate to say this, but I was like, "How inexpensively can I get out of this gallery? Because it's
Right,
cost me a
right.
fortune."
Uh-huh.
But in that moment, and he showed us around, and he was trying to tell
Mhm.
us about the paintings, and he's speaking in French, and we're listening in
Mhm.
English, and he was showing us this, that, and we're like, "Ooh,
Mhm.
ah," you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
just he spent a half hour with us, and he
Oh.
was just this little old man, and he was just talking, and he was so excited, and you could just feel his passion for his work. And then
Absolutely.
he's like, "You wanna take a picture?" And I mean, I know that's what's happening because, the lady takes our cell phone,
Uh-huh.
and then he puts his arm around us, and we whoa, we get a picture of the artist in this
Uh-huh.
gallery. Oh,
Yeah,
this is so
yeah.
cool. And then he signs and he autographs the paintings, and I was
Oh.
so mesmerized. When I came
Mhm.
home, it got front and center, like right there in my
Mhm.
house. And when people
Absolutely.
come over, I'm like, come, look at my paintings. I met the artist. And I felt so proud that we'd had this experience together because it wasn't
Absolutely.
planned.
Right.
It wasn't at an art show, but I know
Mhm.
that I didn't have to pay the $500,000 for the painting. Got a
Right,
lesser
right.
version, and it was a
Mhm.
smaller thing, but
Mhm.
I honor that to this day. And now that
Yeah.
I'm moving and I'm going to another place, it's like, "Whoa, I gotta take those paintings with me. Those are not for sale. I'm not getting rid of them."
Right.
What?
Right, right. Well, there's a few key things that you knew going into that experience. Like, one of the first things you told me when we were, before the show is I love books, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's like you had an idea of who you were as a person and what you liked, and then you saw a visual representation of what you adore, like this combination of maybe author slash book slash, professory
Wisdom.
vibe, wisdom, and so because you had spent time preparing yourself of this is who I am, this is what I like, when you came across it, you knew it and it resonated with you. And maybe your first idea didn't work out, this $500,000 painting, but you got invited in the store because you were looking at it. You were looking at it because you were visually prepared to see something that you knew resonated with you, right?
Mhm.
So that's why it's so important to be open to visual, thinking, to, create, do those visual exercises that we talked about, form opinions on things, decide like who are you visually, right? We spend a lot of time talking about what are our values, what are our morals, we have whole religious organizations, built around helping us figure that out. But your visual sense is, in my opinion, just as important. Your aesthetic sense is just as important, and that's about your home and how you surround yourself, what you see every day. And just like anything else, like crap in, crap out, right? If you surround yourself with crappy visuals, you're going to experience a less beautiful world. And if you surround yourself with artwork that truly inspires you, you're going to be uplifted in your day-to-day life.
So tell us why having 1 or 2 quality pieces of art is better than, just a whole bunch of, I don't know, cheap
Oh,
random art that somebody gave us, or it was on
right.
sale, or we bought it on discount or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of reasons. One, like if you're going to invest in something that you actually like and that you want to have around long term. So the print industry is around passing fads, right? And so what was it like 5 years ago? Live, love, learn, or and now you see all those at the secondhand store, right? Like they're passing out of favor. And there's some people in the world that like truly that message just really resonated with them, and that's amazing and that's great for them in their home. But there are a whole other subset of people that bought it because that's what Instagram was showing us at the
Mhm.
time. And they weren't thinking about, do I actually like this? They're like, oh, I want to be a happy, trendy person, and this is what you do to be a happy, trendy person, and looking from the outside instead of coming from the inside. So, a lot of times the cheap prints, they're in cheap plastic frames. The frames break easily. They're not reusable. Often the cheap prints are framed in a way with like staple guns and stuff that you can't actually replace the print with another print. So the frame is only good for that one print, which is terrible, right? One thing you'll learn about me throughout this time we're spending together is, I'm a big advocate of children's artwork is largely the same size. I buy paintings in standard sizes because I want to share my frame. I don't want 20 framed paintings. I want, a few that I can rotate through and have a high quality frame and not have to store, a painting gets twice as thick every time you add a frame to it, right? So, like it's a little different for me. I'm advocating that you guys only have a handful of paintings. I'm a painter, so I often have a lot of paintings, that I'm cycling through a lot because I'll hang them on my wall before they sell. And then when they sell, they get rotated through. But I forget where I was going with this. Okay, so cheap prints, like the frames aren't even reusable, so that's bad. A couple high quality paintings, you can switch the frames out if you want to, but if you have a high quality painting, you might always want that painting hanging. And also when you put a real painting, they actually look different in different light. So let's say it's feeling a little stale in one area of your house, like you can literally move it, it'll catch light in a different way and you'll start seeing different things in the painting, because a true painting has a three-dimensional quality to it, whereas prints are all like 2D. The prints will get sun damage really easily. Put it in a sunny window. It's not that paintings won't get sun damaged, but at a much lower rate. You still want to be mindful not to put like a direct south-facing sunbeam of light on your paintings, but they will certainly last much longer than any print in the same situation. And then if you're buying a real painting, almost always it'll have a wood frame on it. Very rarely will you buy a painting unless it's a student and they're just desperate. You won't have plastic frames. You will have often custom made wood frames for the painting that are one off. And of course, the best benefit is that you have a painting that doesn't exist anywhere else, that inspired you, that resonated with something that you love in your life. And nobody else can have that. That's completely unique to you. And anybody who comes into your home is going to be like, where did you get this? What is this thing? How did you because it's so unusual anymore to actually collect a real painting. I would like to address, so when I talk to people, I'm like, just buy real art. Like you can spend $500 on these cheap prints over the course of a year, or, a student grade, really high level artwork you can have for the same cost. And people get really intimidated because, what's been lost with this whole print bonanza is that there's knowledge about how to go about buying a painting, right? And it feels really intimidating.
Tell us how, because like many of us did not go through art school. Many of us did not take an art class. And for the majority of us, I'm going to speak on behalf of most of the people that I know. Maybe our audience is more educated in art than I am, but many of us don't know when we look at a painting, whether or not it's quality art. We don't know what we're looking at, and we don't know how to choose art, and we don't know why on earth it's so expensive. So walk us through the process a little bit and tell us how to buy art so that when we recognize something that speaks to our soul and we're like, yes, that's it for me. How do we go about buying it? Do you negotiate price? Like, do you look for smaller versions? Give us all the details.
Okay, so this is easily a whole episode, so buckle up, everybody. But there's a few things. First of all, art is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. If you really like something and the amount that they're asking is worth it to you to have it, then that's the right amount to pay for it. We get really intimidated, like, oh, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Well, that's ultimately up to you to decide. Anybody who's selling artwork, like they are, buying materials, they are painting, they have the years of training. I can only speak to atelier trained artwork, like realism artwork. It takes 4 or 5 years of full-time training to be able to do an atelier level painting or drawing, on top of the, tens, 20s, hundreds of hours to complete a piece, depending on the size and scale of it, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't have to be a great expert, but if you want, like, let's say you like realism, you like paintings that look like the thing that they're supposed to be. That's what realism, generally speaking, is. If you want an affordable, high quality realism piece, go to the ateliers that are training the students. They all have sales at the end of the year that sell student artwork. And like, seriously, you can get some of the highest quality paintings at the lowest prices from these students, and you're doing a service to them because you're helping them pay their tuition, and they're doing a service for you because you're getting a much higher quality piece than you can just going out in the wild. So if you type in atelier art training schools, you will find them. There's a lot in New York City, there's a lot in Italy, but they're popping up all over the place now too. So I run a school online. The Art Renewal Center is an organization that lists a bunch of schools, so you can check there, and they have a map too. Like, not quite every state, but there's a lot of ateliers now that exist. And if you go to them and say, "Hey, I like realism artwork. I would like to buy some student artwork, or any of your students selling artwork. Can I take a look?" Right? That's all you need to do. Be prepared when you do buy student artwork that they are inexperienced at selling artwork too. So they're going to be like, I don't know, $100, right? And you could take their $100, but I would argue that that's a little unethical, and that you should offer them at least $200 for any drawing or painting that they're offering you at an atelier. But some of them will panic and be like, I don't know, $100. But to help them learn too a little bit, you can both learn together. But nobody is ever offended when you ask them, "Oh, is your artwork for sale?" Right? Like, I have never met an artist that's upset that someone asks them, "Is this for sale?" And if you are still a little shy and you don't want to be proactive, if you don't want to go to the school and ask, what you can do is, find artists that you like. So if you search atelier trained artists, you can find a whole bunch of them and get on their mailing list. They'll send you out every time they have a sale, what the things are for sale, and find a couple that you really like and follow them, and join their mailing list, and then they'll tell you when things are for sale and how much, and you don't have to ask, right? So it's if you're more of a passive person, or if you're like, I'm not sure about this, or I don't want to ask, or what if they ask for too much and then I look like a schmuck, like, you don't have to worry about that. Joining artist mailing list is a great way to go about doing that. And then following on Instagram is another way. Like, they're posting things, just be like, "Hey, I like this piece. Is it for sale? And if so, how much?" Like, so they tell you or they don't. Like, they're not like sitting there being like, this person must be poor because they didn't buy this painting that they asked me about, right? Like, we get lots of inquiries, about our artworks, all the time, and some pan out and some don't, but they will tell you, they will give you the answer to your questions. So it's interesting because it used to be that the galleries were selling artwork, and here we can go. All right, so I am a big advocate of going directly to the artists. The galleries used to serve the function of connecting artists with a group of people that were experienced collectors and that regularly purchased artwork. But the whole social media thing has kind of like blown that model up. There are still galleries, and they're a great place to go for research. They're a great place to support, because they are supporting artists. But the reason that pricing is so weird and awkward, and you never know what the price is, and is it a real price or not the real price, is largely because of the gallery system. So the average gallery is going to take 50% on, like, that's a standard fee. So when an artist is selling, if they have an agreement with the gallery, even if they're selling out of their studio, they still have to charge the same gallery price. It's just that they get the full amount instead of having to give half of it to the gallery. Some artists will offer a direct discount where they will give you a certain percentage off if you buy direct from them, but they can only do that if they don't have a gallery agreement that prevents that, right? So
Got it.
That's why it gets questionable. Like, well, how much is it? And sometimes artists will be like, well, it depends. Are you buying it through the gallery or through me? Or, and because of these commission structures that get awkward and weird and are a little archaic and outdated, but a new system hasn't really emerged from the chaos yet. But for me, like, I do gallery shows, but I don't sign exclusivity with galleries. So I won't sign any agreement that limits what I can charge for or sets prices. But that being said, some artists, like, it's really hard. Some artists will be like, this is my favorite painting, I'm going to charge twice as much for it because I can't emotionally let it go, right? So you're dealing with artist emotions. But what I advocate, what I do, and what I advocate for my students to do, and when I'm teaching them and helping them prepare for their art careers, is I suggest
Oh.
that they charge by the square inch because it takes emotion out of it. So, my students might be charging $5 a square inch when they're learning, and by the time they graduate, they might be charging $25 a square inch, right? So, and it's just consistent. And that way you always have the answer. When somebody asks you, how much is this painting? You can be like, oh, it's a 10 by 10, $2,500, right? Like that's what it is. So, it just depends because a lot of artists too, they are doing it, but they're not quite doing it full time, especially if you're in the lower tier price point, right? And so, and and I know that people, when they're going to collect artwork or buy artwork for the first time, it's scary. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and is this okay, or am I making a mistake? Is this a lot of money? But am I overpaying? Am I underpaying? But the artist is experiencing the same thing. Like most of the artists that you see, if you're an entry level collector, are also entry level artists, and they're going through all the same things. They're like, did I sell it too cheap? Did I sell it too much? Do they really like it? Or often they'll ignore you altogether because they're afraid to sell their work because they don't think it's worth it, even though somebody wants to buy it for. So there's a lot of emotions involved in the art world. And there aren't a lot of standards in the prices or things like that. So getting on a mailing list and following an artist for a while is the best way to know what their usual prices are, and what a good deal is, or what to expect when you've been following them for a while, either on Instagram or through their mailing list.
Now I have a trick question. Let's suppose we've acquired the art and it's been on the
Yes.
wall for several years. And at the time we acquired the art, it spoke to the soul. But now our
Hmm.
soul has changed. We've advanced as a person. We're moving on in life. We're downsizing. We don't have a wall that big. And we now have to get rid of that art. How does one
Hmm.
go about selling original art?
Okay, so unless the artist has become more famous, you're almost never going to get the money out of the art that you put into the art. So on one hand, you're like, well, that's a terrible investment. But on the other hand, is it a better investment than the prints on your wall for the last 10 years that didn't bring you joy? Um, so it's a good question. So one thing that I recommend doing is contacting the artist that you purchased it from and say, hey, this piece no longer works in my home. Do you have any others available for a trade? Right. So it's a way to get a new piece with, sometimes they'll charge a trade fee if it's a comparable size. If you're upgrading, obviously you'll pay a little bit more to trade or whatever. But it's a great way to get a new piece of art without losing the value that you put into, especially if you're supporting emerging artists, right, that don't have a resale market. Now, that being said, some collectors, and this is a little bit more advanced, but I do know people that just a particular artist really resonates with them and they just can't get enough of their artwork. They'll buy 5, 6, 10 paintings and fill their whole house with that aesthetic, and like they love it. And then they will do the job of promoting that artist, and get their friends to purchase that artist, or do some marketing for that artist, and then all of a sudden that artist has a secondary sales market, and then they make a big profit when they resell the artwork. And that used to be a very common thing. Like if you look at the Medicis or whatever, they would nurture young artists like young Michelangelo and then profit off of the increased reputation of the artists that they grew. So that's a very old school way to support the arts. Like, but you're more invested. You're like actually invested in promoting their career as an investment. So if you're buying art as an investment, that's one way to do it. If you're just buying work because you want a nice quality piece in your house, and then you change your mind for whatever reason, move house, move aesthetics, have a midlife crisis, whatever it is, then ask to trade with the artist, or you can ask to trade with friends too, or finding. I always believe in finding a good home, for it. So just asking your friends and family, is anybody interested in this piece, or trading me for this piece, or something like that. But
Well, I want to do right by
yeah.
the artist, but here's what
Hmm.
happened. Several years ago, I had a friend who was a conductor, and
Hmm.
I said, "Wouldn't it be nice?" And the conductor also collected Garfield, like Garfield
Oh,
everything.
okay.
So, wouldn't
Yeah,
it be
yeah.
awesome if I commissioned a piece of art that was Garfield as a conductor with the little tux on and the little
Oh,
wand in his hand and
yeah.
whatever? So I commissioned it, and the artist was savvy enough and creative enough that they were conducting the sunshine. And so the sun was
Aw.
like glowing when the
Aw.
Garfield cat was in the tuxedo and had the little wand
Uh-huh.
there. The sun was like leaking music notes. And it was just the most
Oh,
amazing original art piece ever. Okay, well, there
love
are
it.
actually Garfield collectors that
Uh-huh.
this would be valuable to.
Right.
Well, after many years of after I'd commissioned this art and given it as a gift, the artist became famous. And
Mhm.
when the person had passed, their
Mhm.
estate contacted me and gave me the painting back.
Oh, wow.
So now I have this piece of artwork that I don't particularly have a use for. The person
Mhm.
to whom it was created for is no longer
Mhm.
with us. And
Right.
so I could put it on the market and I could sell it.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
was kind of like looking on Google the other day, and I
Mhm.
went to eBay and stuff, and I found some places that it definitely has a market for it. But I
Yeah,
was
great.
thinking, what are the ethics? I mean, like, if I sell this
Yes.
painting, am I supposed to give the artist the money? Because that
Um,
would be the fairest thing, because while they were paid for it once, now
mhm.
that they're more famous and now that it's sold again, they really should make
Mhm.
something off of it a second time,
So
right?
California actually passed a law saying that any resale of original artwork had to pay 10% to the artist on the new price. So that's
Really?
actually a California law now. If
Okay.
you're not in California, I would encourage you to use that as a guideline, right? So
Mm.
if on the profit, so whatever you sell it for minus what you paid for it, 10% of that would go to the artist if the artist is still alive. So that's
Yes,
considered
they
the ethical.
are, but then I
Mhm.
wondered, would it make more sense to regift them the painting and let them do what they want with it? Or would that
I
be
mean, they
insulting? Would that be
uh
insulting, like, somebody gave my painting back, like, after all these years?
what you could contact the artist and say, "This is the situation. I commissioned this piece for, a respected musician, and they passed, and the state returned it to me. I'm not sure what to do next. Do you have a suggestion?" And if they have a strong preference, they'll be like, "I would like to purchase it back from you because I loved this piece and would love to have it back in my collection."
Got it.
Or, they could say, it's your painting, do whatever you want with it, or etc. But if I don't know if it's if you are living in California when you sell it or if the artist is living in California, but if the you might want to find out and make sure that if you do the reselling that you give the artist 10%.
So I like the 10%. I think that's
Mhm,
I think that's nice. And
mhm.
neither me or nor the artist live in California. So
Okay, so yes.
whatever the laws are, but I'm so glad you told us about that law, because I didn't
Mhm,
know about that.
mhm,
But I was thinking to myself, not knowing, like, what
mhm.
are the ethics of this?
Yeah.
Because I know there's a market for it, and I know it would bring
Mhm.
far more now because there is an audience for it. And second of all,
Sure.
because the artist is much more famous now than they were
Mhm,
way back when I had the
mhm.
painting commissioned.
Yeah,
So, but I
yeah.
wanted to do the right thing, and then I thought, if it turns up again and someone else has it, how's the
Uh-huh.
artist gonna feel? Are they gonna feel like, "Yay, it sold again," or are they gonna feel like, "Man, that really sucks. I wanted the painting back," right? And
Yeah.
I didn't know what
Mhm.
I was supposed to do, or if I was gonna hurt their feelings having that
Right.
conversation with them.
Yeah. No, your only real risk is if they were in California, then you'd be obligated to give them the 10% if you did sell it, because they would know about you trying to sell it, but that's the right thing to do anyways, so I think you're safe to contact the artist.
Okay, cool. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, managing art is a little different. It's like anything that you are willing to really invest in and have high quality in your home. Like if you buy a really high end appliance for your home, sometimes it can take a little more maintenance, or, the same thing with an artwork. When you're really investing, you have the one artwork and then you're more sure to take care of it and treat it the right way. You're not going to donate it to Goodwill like you would the print, right? When
Mhm.
you're done with it. So, um,
So tell us about that as well. Okay, so
mhm,
let's say that you have purchased original art. It
mhm,
served its purpose for a period of time in your home. Now that
mhm,
you're becoming more minimalistic in your approach, you're
mhm,
downsizing your choices. And so
mhm.
you have some original art that you're now ready to let go of. Is it
Right.
cool to send that to the secondhand store, a consignment
Yeah, I
store?
mean, it's totally fine to do that. I would encourage you to check the current prices on the artwork. It's also, if you know the artist, I would contact them first for a swap, or you'd be like, "Hey, this painting no longer suits the home. Would you like it back, or would you, especially if there isn't a resale market for it, the artist, giving the artist the opportunity to have it back is a kind gesture. But if you don't know the artist or can't contact the artist, yes, it's perfectly fine. Like, people in Goodwill want real artwork too, right? So, there's a home for many things, and like, oh, I'm so sorry. So there's a home for many things, and I think just being deliberate about how you acquire and then being deliberate about how you divest yourself is the best way to make sure that the next thing you purchase is even more long term for you, right? So if you learn something about yourself and you realize, hey, like I did this. I have a painting that I bought when I was in the middle of a divorce, and it was basically this. It represented chaos, right? It was a musician playing with buildings crumbling behind, right? And that's it really resonated with me in that moment in my life, right? And it really helped me get through this really difficult time. But it's a really solid painting, but it got to the point where it brought me down, right? Because once I moved through the hardest part of that, and it's like, okay, what do I do with this painting? And luckily for me, I run, an art school. So it was a high quality painting. So I donated it to the school to use as an example because it's a really good painting, right? So, finding a good home or the right home for something, communicating with the artists, those are all good options.
So I'm now on the other side of a move, and I had
Mhm.
beautiful artwork in my home. And a stager came into my house, and she said, "All these paintings have to go because they're the wrong color." And I was like, "What?
Uh-huh.
What on earth?" And then she threw these pictures up on my wall, and they were oil on canvas,
Uh-huh.
but it was like shades of gray, like just shades of gray and white, and all the color was gone. And I
Yeah.
had pictures of Venice on my wall. I was like, "That's beautiful." And so the paintings had to come off. And I
Yeah.
remember in my own home looking at these
Mhm.
paintings that were, I mean, it was staged. I knew they were going
Right.
away, but
Right.
just looking at the art, and I didn't particularly enjoy it, and I
Mhm.
couldn't wait for it to leave.
Right, right. Well, one thing when they're staging a home is that they want to do the exact opposite of what we're doing when we're trying to find the artwork that's right for us in our home. We want very personalized artwork that speaks to us. And when they're staging a home, they need basically a blank canvas. Like, if it's too personal of the artwork on the walls, then what it tells the person buying the home or looking at the home, oh, this isn't your home, right? This
Mhm,
is this is a home for somebody who has this kind of artwork, right? And so
mhm,
by basically putting artwork up that doesn't mean anything, right? And literally doesn't mean anything, not even color wise, like just
mhm.
shapes, right? Then it creates the blank canvas for the people coming through being like, oh, this is nobody's home. This could be my home.
All right, so if we have a cluttered home, and so
Mhm,
instead of seeing art and beautiful things, I keep looking at my wall as if a painting is going to appear, and it's just a blank wall. There's no painting on my wall. But
mhm,
if our home is cluttered and we
mhm,
are we are trying to find paintings that speak to us, but that
mhm.
don't cause more chaos or confusion, do we need to clear a space so that we can honor the wall that has the painting? Or what is the process so that we just don't add more stuff
Right.
to our lives?
Right. I do think it's important, at least with where I am on my journey, and I'm still very early in my journey. I'm very new to this world. That for me, I have to be able to specifically think in my head exactly where the piece is going to go and why it's going to bring me joy in that place. Because the
Mhm,
only place to hang your favorite painting is in the closet. Is that actually going to bring you joy? Or if you have to be careful with oil paintings too, with which light you put them in, because they have the brushstrokes make a texture, and if they were painted at this angle and you have light coming in at the opposite angle, it's going to create a lot of glare, right? So you can
mhm.
have an amazing painting but you hang it in the wrong spot and you'll hate it. Right. So it's you have to have a clear vision about not only, okay, this resonates with me, but if there isn't a space in your life, is it worth clearing out something that isn't working for you to put it in? So if you have 10 prints on your wall and you're thinking about this painting that would just look great on that wall, before you buy that painting, are you ready? Like, do you love the painting more than you want to cling to the 10 things that you have on the wall? Right.
Fair enough. So I've got another question. When it comes
Mhm.
to the paintings that are right now on the wall, how do we know if it speaks to me, but let's say it does not speak to my husband. And
Right.
so how do we know what is right for our home and our family if everybody has a different vision of what is good art?
So I think it's just like any other part of the house. There's a few of our own secret places in the house that are just for us, and there are communal places in the house that are for everybody. And I think art can be the same way, right? I have a painting that I hang in the bathroom that I particularly love, and my partner is not the biggest fan of, but it's in the bathroom, and so I can stare at it and enjoy it, but it's not like front and center in the house, right? And he has a painting that he won't let me sell, even though everybody keeps wanting to buy this painting from me, but it's like his favorite painting. And so we put that one in a more prominent, display, in the house. So, um, it's about, it's like any other negotiation in the house. Like, are we going to have a soft bed or a hard bed? Are we going to have pillows on the couch or no pillows on the couch? There's if you really truly love a work of art, I'm a big fan too of hanging artwork like on closet doors on the inside. So if you have a piece that your partner just absolutely hates, hang it on the inside of your closet door. You get to see it every day, but it's not bothering the person that hates it, right? So, there's a lot of places that we can put things that we love that are art. And it's kind of like our little secret, right? Like you open the door and you're like, this is not, like this is just for me. And it's almost like even more enjoyable to have a piece of artwork like that, in a secret spot.
Speaking of artwork in a secret spot, my life is downsizing right now because we're in the process of moving, and I
Hmm.
literally have the studio that I'm in, and that's it.
Hmm.
The rest of the house is in progress.
Hmm.
Yard sales and estate sales and all the stuff.
Hmm.
I'm moving into a one-bedroom apartment while our new home is being built, and so like I have no space. And
Right.
so what I did is I took all of my paintings that I really enjoy, and I took pictures of them
Ah,
and
yeah.
I added them as a screensaver on my computer because I've got my
Hmm.
computer right in front of me. And I set the timer, and you can do this on any laptop or any tablet or whatever. And you
Hmm.
know how like Microsoft has these pictures that circle through and it
Yeah,
shows your
yeah.
screensaver. So I put it on a loop so that it will loop
Mhm.
through all the pictures. And I pulled it from a Google Drive so that all the pictures are in a Google Drive and it will loop
Mhm.
through all the pictures in the Google Drive. And I set it up
Fabulous.
for 30 seconds. So every 30
Mhm.
seconds, if I'm not active on the computer, one of those pictures pops up. And then I can sit here and go,
Um,
whoa, look at that. And then the next
I
one
love
pops
that.
up. Well, like, whoa, look at that again.
Yay.
Whoa, look at that.
Yeah. Well,
I
that works
find,
too.
well,
Yeah.
this is kind of the
Go.
cheap version of it, but I'm finding it doesn't
Mhm.
require a lot of space because it's really just the screen that I'm
Mhm.
using anyway. But then if
Right.
I go get a drink and I come back and my computer has been idle for a minute, it's like, whoa, look at that.
Oh. Well,
Happiness
that
all
works.
over again.
You were asking me, what if you can't afford a painting that you really love, like that first one you saw for $500,000, but you can take a picture of the paintings that you love, even if you can't afford them, and have them going on your screen or whatever, because it's going to develop your sense of aesthetic, right? And,
Mm.
if you collect and look at the things that you like, then when you do come across something that has that aesthetic that is affordable, you'll be able to recognize it, right?
Well, I have a question now, and this is about oil on canvas.
Okay.
How do you clean oil on canvas? How do you clean the paintings? Because some of them do not have glass on the front of them. It's just
Right.
canvas
Often
with
they
a
won't.
frame.
Okay, first of all, just keeping the dust off oil paintings is key. Dust is brutal to oil paintings, and that's why even on the back of oil paintings, they'll often have paper covering it. That doesn't have any special effect on the paint per se, but it does keep dust off the back, which can damage the canvas over time. Um, you can, if it's a varnished canvas, so when you have an oil painting, it's painted with oil, it dries, and then the artist will have a layer of varnish on top. Now,
Mhm.
that varnish is the protective layer of the paint. You can, with a damp cloth, wipe the surface of the painting. That varnish will yellow over time. Like if you look at old master paintings that have that kind of like oldish, crackled look, that's the varnish usually that's aging. Now, the advantage of varnish is that you can actually take the varnish off and put new varnish on, which is what varnish is meant to do, right? It protects your painting and it can be removed and replaced. Now, that being said, you have to be very careful who you're buying your oil paintings from, because if someone is mass producing oil paintings and they're just barely dry and then they're getting varnished, then when you take the varnish off, it's going to take the oil paint underneath. off with it and it'll create a
Ah,
mess. So if you buy paintings from ateliers, like they know better and they'll do it the right way. If you're painting random oil paintings off the street from somebody who makes 20 a day, I would not take the varnish off. You might, as you can get varnish at like any craft store or whatever, like a Damar varnish or a spray, a retouch varnish. So if you're not sure if your painting was varnished correctly, you can always put your own layer of varnish on, before you take it into your house. And that way, at least that layer will come off, right? So, but I'm really getting the nitty gritty. Like if you were to buy an oil painting today, nobody would need to take the varnish off for like 100 years. So unless you plan on being
okay.
around 100 years from now, it's not really your problem.
Well, the reason I ask is because as a house cleaner, my background is in house cleaning. We've
Mm-hmm.
been inside thousands of people's homes, and some of them are
Mm-hmm.
really nice homes, and they've got really nice original artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And as a house cleaner, there's no standard in the industry. Like they don't train house cleaners how to clean really expensive artwork.
Sure,
And so
sure.
typically we say, hey, hands off. I haven't been trained
Mm-hmm.
how to clean your really expensive painting. Therefore, let's agree that
Right.
I'm not the person to clean it.
Yeah.
And you
I
probably
mean,
have somebody
if
at the
you just
studio that can do that.
Yeah, if you just dust them, that's the most important thing. Just keep dust off your oil paintings. So, and it tends to collect on the top of the frame or whatever, but just just dust your paintings and you'll be fine. If you did nothing but dust them, then they'll be in good shape.
And what do you dust them with? I mean, do you
The
use like a
like
Swiffer
little
duster? Do you use a
yeah.
feather
Hmm.
duster? Just
Yep,
okay.
you can. Just as long if your painting is very, very, very newly painted, sometimes it can be tacky, so you don't want to do any dusting. But any painting that's a few months old or older, you can dust. So.
And my suggestion would be have a duster that is specifically for the oil paintings. Because if you use a
Mm-hmm.
duster that you're using for all of the different tchotchkes in the house and all the different picture frames and stuff, and then you go to an oil on canvas, because of the texture, it is possible that
Mhm.
you brush the dust into the painting that's already
Yeah.
on the duster itself.
Yeah, definitely use a clean duster when you do your paintings, for sure.
Nice. Okay, cool. Is there
Yeah.
anything that I forgot to ask that you want to share with us that a newbie to artwork that's going to buy and invest in some art needs to know that maybe I didn't ask?
I mean, just be brave. Like it seems scary just because it's not part of our culture, our mainstream culture, but if you really love a painting, don't let your insecurity or your not knowing the process keep you from asking. Like, no, you can afford that $500,000 painting, but you are asking led to a painting that you could afford, right? From an artist
Mhm,
that you love. So,
mhm.
be brave and ask your artists, build relationships with artists, start collecting artists like you do Pokemon cards, right? Like, okay, and follow them, and you'll start developing your own aesthetic because you'll be like, oh, that painting was a whiff from Mandy. Woo, what was she thinking when she painted that one? And then the next one is like, okay, yeah, that's the Mandy classic, right? So you'll develop your appreciation and sense just by following it, much like if you follow movie series or sports, right? Like start following artists and you build even a relationship just by following up with artists and seeing what they're up to today. So kind of poke around the internet, find a few artists. Like I challenge everybody here, find 3 artists that you find their artwork interesting and just join their mailing list or follow them on Instagram and just keep tabs of them for like a month or two and see how that affects your aesthetic sense.
And knowing that artists share 50% of their profits with a gallery, is that also true if you go to like an outdoor fair and they have artists that have rented like a table or a booth or
It
whatever and they're there
depends.
painting?
Because individual artists can rent the booth, and of course they're paying the fee to be there, but also gallerists can rent the booth, in which case the artists they're representing, they're getting the 50% fee. So it just depends if you're purchasing from an individual artist or if you're purchasing from a gallery that has a booth.
Is it tacky to ask the artist, "If I purchase this, am I purchasing directly from you or from the" I mean, like, maybe you'd like to
Um,
give the artist all the money?
right. But if the artist has an agreement with the gallery and that's where you find them, the ethical thing to do is to buy through the gallery, because the
Got it.
gallery is being paid to find exposure and new clients, and that's what they've done if you're a new client for the artist. So.
I got it, okay.
Mhm.
So just be forthright about what your intentions are. Do you tip artists? Is it traditional to give them a tip?
It's not traditional. If you feel that you underpaid, then perhaps offer paying the shipping on the painting and give an additional amount. Sometimes artists are insecure, especially if you do buy student art. So let's say you buy a $200 painting, but it's actually a really good painting and worth way more than $200. Be like, okay, I'll give another $100 for shipping. Just give them money for shipping is the way to tip your artist
Give them a
if
tip.
you feel like they charge you too little for the painting.
This has been so fascinating. Thank you so much. I've learned
Yes,
so much. And
great.
I feel now as we're downsizing and we're getting rid of some of the clutter in our lives, that hanging on to some really valuable pieces that really speak to us and speak to the person that we're becoming is far more valuable than, like you said, a whole bunch of fad pieces that we purchased on discount that came into our lives that could easily go without
Mhm.
emotional sadness and what have you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, if you don't feel conflicted about letting go of a piece of artwork, not because of someone else gave it to you, but because you still have feelings about it, then it's probably a good sign that you bought it in the first place, even if you're done with it now. But if you're like, "Oh, that's out of season," then that probably
Mhm.
wasn't the piece for you.
Yeah. All right. Tell our listeners where they can go to find you.
Sure. So you can find me at School of Atelier Arts. That's spelled Atelier Arts. We offer free online classes. I actually have a free color class. So if you're working on your aesthetics, it's a great way to think about color, and you can take that for free. And it's on our homepage there. We also do online classes. So if you're interested in learning how to draw and paint realistically, I hope you'll consider joining our monthly class.
That is awesome. Thank you. And I want to get on your mailing list. I'm
Please
so
do.
excited. I want to meet some of your students. I want to see their art. I'm going to start following them on Instagram. You guys, this has been just
Absolutely.
an educational hour. Thank you so much, Mandy, for joining
Thank you.
us. And I hope that you guys will ask your questions in the comments and notes below, because we'll be back after the show is over and especially on the replay to answer those questions and to keep you guys in touch with Mandy so that you can also be added to her mailing list. So thank you so much for today.
Thank you.